나 보세요. 나 감염자가 아니라고요.
A mass grave piled with countless bodies. Human life treated as worthless. We have to admit, Korean cinema is so bold. In 2013, a film called Flu took the world by storm. Directed by Kim Sun-soo, it used a near-allegorical narrative to portray a modern society torn apart by a deadly virus outbreak. Unlike Train to Busan, which showed a zombie siege, the horror of Flu lies in the virus's invisibility, spreading at a geometric speed that suffocates the audience within just a few days. A thriving city turns into a post-apocalyptic wasteland, but faced with such chaos, the government, in order to hide the truth, goes as far as declaring martial law and deploying the army. The infected are treated like trash, packed up and sent to massive incineration sites for disposal. The shadow of death looms over everyone, and the bloody reality of human nature is fully exposed. For anyone who has lived through a pandemic, this film will strike painfully close to home. Just a few days earlier, a shipping container filled with Southeast Asian stowaways arrived in Bundang, Korea. As the doors slowly opened, a foul and nauseating stench burst out. Two brothers who came to receive the shipment shone their flashlights inside and found the entire truck filled with rotting corpses. Just as they were about to run away, a boy suddenly crawled out from the mountain of bodies. After a brief discussion, the brothers decided to take the boy with them, then drove toward the city center. Halfway through the trip, they stopped at a rest area for a break. The boy seized the chance to jump off and escape. Around that time, the younger brother began to burn with fever, so the older one took him to a pharmacy to get some medicine. Seeing him coughing non-stop, the pharmacist gave him some cough syrup. A nearby child tried to cheer the man up, but his uncontrollable saliva sprayed onto the child's face. The man kept coughing, and his droplets quietly spread across the pharmacy. No one knew that he wasn't suffering from a simple cold. A massive disaster was already on its way. The next day, the pharmacist began coughing on the bus. The high school student coughed all the way to the teacher's desk when handing in his homework. The kid who played with the man collapsed with a fever at kindergarten. And back in the car, the younger brother kept vomiting blood despite taking the medicine. Realizing something was terribly wrong, the older brother rushed him to the hospital. The attending doctor happened to be Kim In-hae, the city's leading infectious disease specialist. After an initial assessment of the symptoms, the medical team suspected the patient had contracted a deadly strain of swine flu. In-hae checked the man's phone videos and discovered that he was infected through the corpses in the shipping container. Everyone took it seriously. This was the first recorded case of animal-to-human swine flu transmission in the country. To understand the source, In-hae questioned the brother about the container's location. Since human smuggling is a gray area, the brother pretended to know nothing. He tried to take his sibling out of the hospital, but when the staff insisted the patient needed quarantine, he went berserk and broke into the surgery room. As he watched his brother die helplessly, grief turned into madness. When medical staff tried to pull him away, he smeared blood all over their faces. Eventually, the doctors sedated him and managed to restrain him. Meanwhile, another flu patient was brought into the hospital. Realizing the severity of the situation, the professor immediately reported it to the city's disease control center and informed everyone in a meeting. This virus spreads through the respiratory system. Once infected, victims die painfully within about 60 hours. There is currently no medicine that can effectively stop it. But what's truly shocking is that the officials failed to grasp the gravity of the situation. Outside, more and more people started coughing. Infected drivers lost control of their cars and crashed. An infected bride collapsed and died while exchanging rings, and an infected traffic officer continued directing cars until his final moment. The streets were filled with people coughing and vomiting blood, while government officials hid in a conference room, still debating the professor's proposal to lock down the city until they looked out the window and saw the chaos unfolding right before their eyes. As confusion spread, a staff member rushed in with an urgent report. The number of patients in Bundang is doubling rapidly. Every hospital is full, and now even many doctors and nurses are in quarantine. Only then did the high-ranking officials realize the disaster's magnitude. They immediately arranged helicopters to flee to a safer location to discuss the next move. In-hae had the chance to leave with them, but because her daughter Miru was still at home, she ignored the professor's warning and turned back. What she didn't know was that just hours earlier, Miru had finished her meal and went to the parking lot with some bread to feed stray cats. There, she met the Southeast Asian boy hiding in the shadows. Miru offered him the bread. Seeing that he was coughing badly, the kind-hearted girl asked firefighter Jigu to come help. But by the time they arrived, the boy had already disappeared. As Jigu carried Miru to search for the boy, they encountered a passerby collapsing from infection. Jigu placed Miru on a bench to rest while he went to help. But when he returned, the girl was gone. Meanwhile, the desperate Inhei called Miru's phone and reached Jigu. Learning their approximate location, Jigu then checked surveillance footage and spotted Miru inside a supermarket. By then, panic had broken out inside. People were looting supplies, and many infected were coughing up blood. Just as Miru was pinned down by an infected person, Jigu appeared in time to rescue her. After reuniting with Inhei, the three planned to leave, but armed forces suddenly stormed into the supermarket, violently forcing everyone out. With no choice, Jigu led Inhei and her daughter through the back door to escape. By now, the entire city of Bundang was trying to flee. The president held an emergency press conference, promising, "We will do everything in our power to ensure the safety of all Bundang citizens." Following advice from American medical experts, the government began implementing a series of measures. The first step: everyone must wear masks and board assigned transport to reach designated quarantine zones. The second step: remove all clothing for full inspection to check for red rashes or coughing. Anyone showing symptoms would be sent to the treatment zone. The third step: those uninfected must stay in tents for 48 hours. If no symptoms appear afterward, they will be released. The plan sounded reasonable, but the professor disagreed. He warned, putting the infected and healthy together is extremely dangerous. If mishandled, it could infect everyone. His words carried little weight, and arrogant officials ignored him. Meanwhile, Inhei and her daughter were also forcibly taken to the quarantine zone, undergoing the same strict inspection as everyone else. While undressing his daughter for inspection, he suddenly noticed red rashes appearing behind her ear. The sight terrified Inhei, and in order to prevent her daughter from being taken away, she told Miru to stop coughing. Taking advantage of the chaos around them, she secretly pushed her daughter past the checkpoint. After successfully reaching the non-infected zone, everyone carried their assigned government numbers to find their tents. However, the living conditions there were unbearable. Food, water, and sanitation were all serious problems. The frustrated citizens began shouting at the armed guards.
무슨 권한으로 우리한테?
이 시간 이후로 일체 질문이나 불평, 불만 없습니다. 아시겠습니까?
Kind-hearted Jigu couldn't stand the chaos and tried to intervene, but one of the guards pointed a gun directly at his head. Just when the tension was about to explode, a man wearing a mask stepped forward to calm things down. When he pulled down his mask, it turned out to be Ma Dong-suk, the man famous for his explosive strength. The once aggressive guards immediately lowered their weapons. It turned out that Gu Quan was the commanding officer here, but don't be fooled by his calm demeanor. He was, in truth, a ruthless villain. The outbreak in Bundang quickly drew national attention. In a public poll about whether Bundang should be locked down, 35% of people expressed support. Soon after, the president arrived to discuss the situation. He had invited epidemic control experts from the United States, who confidently stated, "America leads the world in pandemic management. There will be no problem." Meanwhile, Jigu, worried about Inhei, finally found her and her daughter. Seeing the red rash on Miru's hand, Inhei confessed everything. "I know it's selfish," she said, "but I can't let them take my daughter away. Based on what I've seen, there's no effective medicine to treat this infection. Those sent to the treatment zone rarely come back." At the same time, her friend Kyunub shared a grim rumor. "People say the government isn't treating the infected, they're eliminating them." Hearing this, Jigu was stunned. He couldn't believe the government would abandon its own people. Elsewhere, the Southeast Asian boy who had escaped earlier was captured and brought into the quarantine zone. Although he still had traces of the rash, his temperature had returned to normal. His body had developed antibodies against the virus. When the guards discovered this, they immediately took him to the medical station inside the quarantine area. Because of the staff shortage, Inhei was also called in to help. She entrusted Miru to Jigu's care and went to assist. In a video call with the professor, In-hae suggested separating the boy's blood serum to create an injection for patients. However, the American experts immediately rejected her idea. In-hae grew desperate, knowing her daughter didn't have much time left. As 48 hours passed and no one in the non-infected zone was released, the president arrived and demanded an explanation. "Why are they still being held?" he asked. The American expert replied, "The virus is spreading uncontrollably within the main zone. If we release 230,000 people, the entire situation will collapse." Although such measures were cruel to the residents of Bundang, they claimed it was necessary to protect the rest of the country. The public poll in favor of the lockdown had risen from 35% to 96%. The president was left speechless. Meanwhile, chaos and anger inside the quarantine zone were growing worse by the minute. Amid the confusion, In-hae distracted her colleagues and secretly brought Miru to the boy, begging him to save her daughter. The boy recognized her as the kind girl who once gave him bread, so he stopped resisting and allowed In-hae to draw his serum and inject it into Miru. But Gu Kwan witnessed everything. He immediately ordered the guards to treat the girl as an infected person and take her away. In-hae tried to resist but was injected with a sedative. To rescue Miru, Shigu broke into what they called the treatment zone, only to be shocked by the horrific sight. The so-called treatment area was filled with corpses. Those who had died were packed like garbage and sent to a massive incineration site for disposal. Shigu rushed into the burning ground to search for Miru, but it was like finding a needle in a haystack. Just as despair was consuming him, a familiar ringtone pierced through the noise. It was Miru's phone. Following the sound, he finally found her buried under a pile of bodies, still barely breathing. Outside, one of the guards maintaining order discovered that his own mother had been sent to the so-called quarantine treatment area after becoming infected. His heart broke completely. He and others had witnessed the horror firsthand. When it happened to his own family, he couldn't bear it anymore. The young man tried to save his mother but was restrained by his comrades. In his final act, he shouted the truth of what was really happening to the crowd outside. Moments later, he was shot dead by his commanding officer, and his death ignited the fury of the people. The enraged citizens overpowered the guards, broke through the defenses, and stormed into the incineration area, witnessing with their own eyes the government's so-called treatment process. At that moment, despair consumed everyone. They erupted in madness, attacking staff and medical workers alike. Tragically, during the chaos, the only boy who carried antibodies was stabbed by a man seeking revenge for his brother's death. Though the guards immediately shot the attacker, the boy was left gravely wounded and on the brink of death, facing a crowd that had completely lost control. In-hae had no choice but to leave in a military vehicle instead of searching for her daughter. At the same time, chaos broke out inside the command center. No one there had imagined that using force would provoke such fierce resistance from the public. The president insisted on releasing the citizens, saying, "We've already found an antibody. If this news is made public, it will surely calm everyone down." However, the Prime Minister and the American advisors still believed that the crisis stemmed from insufficient force. Just then, devastating news arrived. The boy who carried the antibodies had died from excessive blood loss during transport. That meant they had lost their only source of hope. At that moment, Gu Kwan also joined the rioters. It turned out he had been infected too, and under his hateful influence, the citizens began shouting slogans like "Break out of Bundang" and "March to Seoul," as they launched a full-scale protest. Soon, the enraged crowd flooded onto the streets, clashing violently with armed police. Seeing the escalating chaos, the Prime Minister gave a brutal order to the frontline troops. If anyone crosses the yellow line, shoot on sight.
나 보세요. 나 감염자가 아니라고요. 제발 나 좀 여기서.
The president, driven to desperation, shouted back in fury, "Under no circumstances should you ever point your guns at your own people." Gunfire erupted, and countless citizens fell to the ground. In the chaos, Shigu and Miru were separated. Meanwhile, the infected Guquan targeted Miru, having seen In-hei inject her with serum earlier. He tried to capture her and extract her blood. At the critical moment, Shigu's friend Kyanub arrived and stopped him. Knowing Kyanub wouldn't dare to shoot, Guquan lunged at him, and the two engaged in a fierce struggle. Shigu soon arrived and joined the fight, wrestling with Guquan. Stumbling out of the tent, Guquan clutched his abdomen, blood pouring from a deep stab wound. Moments later, he collapsed and died. Shigu quickly informed In-hei that Miru had recovered. Upon hearing the news, In-hei immediately reported it to the president. Seeing a glimmer of hope, the president asked her personally to find Miru among the crowd. Determined to rescue her daughter, In-hei ran toward the front line, but the guards stopped her. "We've received no new orders," they said coldly. "Anyone crossing the security line will be shot." Terrified, In-hei waved her arms desperately, shouting for the crowd not to move forward. Meanwhile, Miru was being pushed forward by the surging mob. Within moments, she was forced to the very front. Not understanding what was happening, she saw her mother and instinctively ran toward her. To protect her daughter, In-hei ran to meet her. Just as Miru was about to cross the line, In-hei threw herself in front of her, taking the bullet instead. Shigu, rushing in at the last second, caught her in his arms. The crowd froze in shock. To protect her wounded mother, Miru began crying uncontrollably, a heartbreaking scream that pierced through the chaos. For anyone watching the film, that raw, trembling cry was impossible to forget. At that moment, both the terrified citizens and the emotionless soldiers were moved by the child's grief. One by one, they stepped forward, linking hands to form a human shield in front of Miru and her mother. Facing protests from the Korean president, the American representatives remained firm, based solely on In-hei's claim. "We cannot confirm the accuracy of the antibody case. If the infected people of Bundang are released and the virus spreads beyond Korea, it will endanger the entire world." With that, they ordered an airstrike on Bundang. The desperate president confronted the American delegates, declaring that he would take full responsibility for halting both the frontline gunfire and the planned air raid. After long hesitation, the American side finally canceled the strike.
분당 시민 여러분, 대통령입니다. 정부는 그 어떠한 경우에도 여러분들을 포기하지 않습니다. 모든 진압 작전을 중단시켰습니다. 이제부터 안심하십시오. 지금 그 자리에 그대로 계셔 주십시오. 즉시 구조팀을 보내드리겠습니다.
The president immediately dispatched a special vehicle to escort Miru to the disease control center to extract her antibodies. Tests confirmed that Miru's body had indeed developed immunity, and for the first time, the president breathed a sigh of relief. In today's world forever changed by real pandemics, watching flu again carries a deeper meaning. Its power lies not in predicting the arrival of a virus, but in revealing the moral choices and struggles humanity faces when disaster strikes. Viruses will always exist, but true immunity lies in our respect for life, our pursuit of truth, and our unwavering belief in the goodness of human nature.